Hi, it's our final week.
And it's all about goals, ethics and values.
Hi, it's Craig here, and here's Sherelle this week. I'm filling in for Richard, who's in Thailand running a retreat at the moment, including a number of learners from the who've done this course in previous iterations, so it's fantastic. And thank you, Sherelle. It's tremendous to have you in front of the camera, because everybody would know you so well from, and Liz, of course, from behind the scenes, but it's great to have you in front of the camera today.
Sure, thanks Craig. It's really lovely to be here
Yeah.
and to be able to talk in person about some of the key topics that came up this week. The biggest one really was around mindful ethics and ethical decision making, and there was a lot of content on the course in this, but some people were still asking for sort of some more advice and instruction on this. So have you got any tips?
Well, some would think, why do we have this in a mindfulness course? Others would say, how could you have a mindfulness course without these kinds of topics? And I think you could look at it in both those perspectives. But we've tried not to be prescriptive about ethics and saying, well, if you're mindful and if you're ethical, you should do this, this and this, and you shouldn't do that, that and that. But more provide mindfulness as perhaps a platform from which we can develop capacities to start to be more conscious of the choices we make, to be more conscious of what's the motivation behind them, to be more aware of the effects of the choices that we make, so that decision-making, our values in life, the goals that we set are more conscious for us, more considered, more reflective. And so that's what we hope. And very often it's a common thing I've found in mindfulness courses. I suspect you might have found the same thing, that just doing a generic mindfulness course often evolves over a series of weeks when learners start to say, oh, I'm making different choices. I'm valuing different things. It was all about the money and the position and the advancement, the promotion. And now I'm just kind of sitting back and saying, well, those things are all very well, but it's more about contentment. It's more about connection with others. It's more about doing something that I feel is of use or service to the world.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think when we study mindfulness, we really become more aware of our own mind and our own motivations and the impact our decisions have on other people as well. So just naturally, whether or not we are explicitly teaching ethics in our mindfulness courses, I find that just naturally people become more ethical as a result of the practice.
More compassionate, more pro-social, I think, as we've discussed in recent weeks. And in terms of goals as well, a lot of interesting discussion about, well, goal setting and some challenges as well, like, you know, considering what would we like engraved on our tombstone. And it's not like, it's not a kind of a literal exercise, but more of I suppose, a thought of experiment. You know, what is it that we wish to dedicate our lives to? You know, what is it? Because it's so easy to mindlessly and on automatic pilot get sort of swept along with the world and taking on values which not have really considered, but just take them on automatically. And perhaps, you know, mindfulness gives us an opportunity to pause.
Yeah, definitely. And there was also some questions, though, Craig, about mindfulness not really being goal-oriented. You know, we're supposed to be accepting where we are at the moment. So when we're setting goals, how is that compatible?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll share something from my own experience, because I think we're all learning about this, but I certainly had a vision because of the experience of mindfulness in my own life, even before mindfulness was a term that was being used. But I can remember it set a direction for me in my life of what was important to me. And when I started teaching at Monash, and I'd like to introduce these kinds of things, I suppose in a sense there was a goal, but I can remember a couple of years in and it wasn't kind of happening, and it wasn't kind of... and I can remember I was quite attached to that goal. I kind of wanted to, and there was a kind of a frustration or an irritation, and I kind of let go. Yeah. I just kind of let go. Well, so be it. If it's not meant to be, maybe there's something else that, you know, another direction or path in life. The funny thing was, no sooner let go of my attachment to my goal, which caused stress and everything else, then this door opens, an opportunity arises, and it's kind of all unfolded since then.
Sure, and it happens time and time again, doesn't it? That when we let go, it creates more space. Often when we're really willing something to happen and wanting it to happen, there's a bit of stress around that happening, and when we can just accept what's happening, it often allows a bit more space for new creativity to kind of come.
Yeah, and I find that attachment to a goal or an outcome kind of leads to a desire to impose or force or contrive or push something where it may not be the natural flow for it to go. And I find there's a lot more creativity and flexibility in working towards something if there's not the attachment to the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the, and also living in the future. It will all be good if this happens, when we don't know necessarily.
Sure.
So there's a kind of a goal setting, but I think the non-attachment, the awareness, the flexibility, I think that all comes with mindfulness. And yeah.
Exactly. So having a goal is fine to be working towards, but watching that you're not overly attached to what you think the outcome of that goal might be, because it may shift and change over time.
Yeah, who knows, yeah. And there was an interesting quote there as well.
Yeah, I really like that one. A learner mentioned it. It was about when you climb the ladder of success, be sure it's leaning against the right building. And I thought that was a nice reminder that, when we're reaching for the goals, just make sure we're heading somewhere with that moral compass, somewhere in the right direction for us.
Yes, yeah. And now the extended practice this week was a great opportunity, but challenging for many learners as well.
Exactly. So for some learners, having the longer practice, a 20-minute practice, allowed them to go deeper into the practice, and they felt they really got to a more mindful, aware, steady space, and really enjoyed that. But for some others, that longer time just allowed more time for the puppy to come out and play, and there was a lot more mind wandering and a lot more people mentioning that they were falling asleep as well in the practice.
Yes. And look, sometimes the mindfulness just makes us aware that there's a background level of tiredness.
Yes, exactly.
There's a need for rest, and that's all right.
Yeah,
But even if, we practice for longer and the mind goes off 1,000 times, well, there's 1,000 opportunities to notice. There's 1,000 opportunities to gently bring the attention back, and there's 1,000 opportunities to cultivate that kind of non-judgmental attitude, that kind of gentleness with which we're bringing it back. So that's not a bad practice. It's just it's not as easy to practice for a longer period of time in some ways.
Sure. And for those that are falling asleep a bit while they practice or feeling drowsy, just a few recommendations. First of all, make sure you're getting enough sleep. You might try practicing a bit earlier in the day if you're always practicing at night, or maybe after lunch, after a heavy meal, you might notice you're a little bit more sleepy, so maybe trying in the morning. You could also try sitting a little further forward in your chair, not leaning back in the chair and getting too comfortable. Keeping the eyes open can be helpful too if you notice that you're drifting towards sleep. I often recommend that.
Yeah. So I think a number of learners also this week explored the Choiceless awareness practice and found it very helpful. Yeah,
that was a really popular practice. I think a lot of learners have mentioned that to be their favourite practice of the course in some of the later steps. That was coming up a lot. So I think the idea of not focusing on just one thing at a time, having that more open awareness was a little easier, more accessible for learners than focusing on the body scan and breath awareness, which is interesting because I often teach focusing on the body and the breath first because it's concrete, it's tangible, we can kind of see it. Sort of just noticing what is a little bit more esoteric, as it were. But a lot of learners, I guess because they're experienced mindfulness practitioners, really did value that practice.
Yeah, I think it is helpful to start with something that's grounding and the awareness of the body that develops through things like the body scan and the breath. I think it's very helpful. And so, the choiceless awareness, the open monitoring kind of practices, for many are hard to start with.
Yeah.
But it's great to see many are really graduating to that and finding it very helpful.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Lots of useful discussion as well about mindful eating and media and so on.
Yeah, definitely. And having explored mindful eating in our introductory course, I think a lot of learners are really quite good at that now, but we're extending their thought more around that mindful buying of food and mindful food preparation, making sure you're not wasting things, that you're making ethical and positive environmental sort of choices there, particularly when so many people are going without. So that whole mindful awareness around food really came through this week.
Yeah, tremendous. So it's been a fantastic 4 weeks. We've really valued so much all the learners, all the contributors, and our repeat learners as well. And thank you also for all the people behind the scenes here at Monash, all the future learn that really helped to make these courses possible. And on the feedback video will be there, of course, but step 4.14, and we very much value your input, your insights, because as you know, if you've done this course a few times, we always take that on board and try and hone and improve what we do. And so, and also go to the review sites. We're very happy and very honoured in a way that our learners have, with Class Central, rated these courses. Both of the mindfulness courses we run in the top 30 of all MOOCs of all time with Class Central, which has been tremendous.
So thank you so much for giving us that positive feedback on those review sites. And of course, at the end of the course, people might be interested to repeat again. We're starting this next run on the 18th of November of this course, but some of you might also be interested in doing our introductory course, Mindfulness for Wellbeing and Peak Performance, which begins on October the 7th. So you can enrol for both of those courses now or register your interest for those now.
Fantastic. So thanks to everybody, and we'll look forward to perhaps crossing paths and somewhere in the ether some stage in the future.
Thank you.